So today we'll be talking about the law of the sea. Okay. So a long time ago, there has been a dispute. Every state now propose a new line that is part of their territory. If you recall, a long time ago, I discussed that there is only 3 nautical miles, okay, from the baseline of each country that forms part of the territory of the country. The reason behind that 3 nautical miles is because that's the only distance that a cannonball can reach. Okay, because of now of the advancement of the technology, we no longer use a cannonball. Okay, that is why it may be a threat even if the enemy is very far to a territory of another state. Okay, so by then the state proposed to the United Nations that it will now be extended to 12 nautical miles from the low water mark. Okay. Now, what is law of the sea? It is the body of international rules that bind states and other subjects of international law in their marine affairs. It is one of the oldest branches of public international law built on widely accepted customary laws. Okay? So, it is still built on customary laws, meaning the one that is commonly practiced becomes the law. Okay, in the Philippines, as you all know, our territory is based on what the Congress proposed a long time ago, that our territory will be extended to 12 nautical miles. So, would it be binding? It is not actually the United Nations that set our territory. It is us that proposes it to be 12 nautical miles. They accepted it, that forms part now of our territory. Now, what are the functions of the law of the sea? Okay, one is spatial distribution of national jurisdiction. Okay, what do you mean by that? The law of the sea divides the ocean into multiple jurisdictional zones and provides the rights and obligations of the coastal state and the third states according to their zones. Okay? So, Philippines proposed 12 nautical miles such that the international water, which is very far from other countries, is subject to the coastal state. Meaning, if the state is adjacent to that body of water, has the sole or exclusive right to explore it at the exclusion of those countries that are very far. Okay, example is the conflict of China and Philippines. Okay, as you know, that territory which is now controversial is within the adjacent or within the coastal state of Philippines and very far from the coastal state of China. Okay, so by rule, it should be Philippines that has control over it. Now, but that territory, as we know, is beyond the 12 nautical miles, which is exclusively owned by Philippines. Okay, adding to it, what they call the distance of another 12 nautical miles from the territorial water of the Philippines. That is called the contiguous zone, and another 200 nautical miles counting from the baseline outward, that is called the exclusive economic zone. Is it part of the Philippines exclusively? No, it's not. Okay, but Philippines has an right, exclusive right to explore it. Okay, what do you call that right? Exploration, exploitation, and research. Contiguous zone. What is the right of the Philippines to operate? Violations of customs. Okay, environmental protection. The second is ensuring international cooperation between states. Ensuring international cooperation between states. The law of the sea provides a legal framework for ensuring international cooperation in marine affairs, thereby safeguarding the common interests of international community as a whole. Okay. Outside the 12 nautical miles, another 12 nautical miles contiguous zone and 200 nautical miles from the baseline is now called the high seas or international water. Who owns it? Who owns the international water? Huh? Everybody owns it. Everybody owns it. Now, what is a baseline? Of course, I keep on mentioning baseline, right? As the basis of counting the territory of the Philippines. What is baseline? Also called the international limit of a territorial sea. It is the line from which the extent of the territorial sea is measured. Okay? The other coastal zones, which are denied in terms of distance from the coast, are also measured from the same baseline. So meaning, where can you count the baseline? Starting from the low water mark of each island. I discussed that one already. Okay? So, imagine this is territory. You count every outward, counting from the low water mark. And the low water mark there refers to the what? The lowest low tide. Okay? If the lowest low tide extends to, let's say, 5 miles, then that is the low water mark. Okay? Because there are islands in the Philippines in which if there is a low tide, it even extends to 5 miles. That's where you start counting. The lowest low tide of it, that's where you start. That's the baseline. Okay? From that baseline, you count outward of all these islands in the Philippines, north, south, east, west, okay, northeast, southwest, all of that counting outward 12 nautical miles, that is called the Philippine territory. That is called, what they call those lines that are the lowest water mark, it's called the baseline. Okay, it is called the internal limit of the territorial sea. Okay, now what are the different types of baselines? There are 4 types. Okay, under the United Nations Convention on Laws of the Sea, there are 1 normal baseline. The low water line drawn along the coast. That is called normal baseline. The low water line drawn along the coast. Another is straight baseline. What is straight baseline? A system of straight lines joining specified, okay, or discrete points on the low water line which may be used only in localities where the coastline is deeply indented and cut into. There is a fringe of islands along the coast in its intermediate vicinity. Okay, this is what we apply. Philippines is an archipelagic. It is not like in other country where it has only one coast. Philippines is an archipelago. It's studded with islands. Okay, and you see it not as different islands but as a whole. That forms part of the Philippines. Studded with islands, seeing it as a whole, just like entering into a compound. Okay, a compound composed of so many houses, but you see it not as a house but the entire compound. Similar to how we treat Philippines as an archipelago. Okay, of how many islands? Is that the new one? There's a latest. Huh? Latest as far as the Facebook is concerned? Or as far as your knowledge in elementary is concerned? By the? Again, I cannot understand because your mouth is covered with, what do you call it? So it's now 7,641. But a long time ago, what do you know about it? Okay. 7,107. Now it's 7,641 official already. Is there a pronouncement from the authorities that it is now 6,100, 7,641? Not yet, right? But anyway, if that will come out, what will be? Probably that is a correct answer. Now, so start with islands as a whole. Okay, you see it as one body of land. That is the Philippine archipelago. Okay, so we apply the straight baseline, counting it from the each of the tip of the low mark of those islands outside the Philippines, or outside of the outermost of the territory. Okay, counting it, connecting it, that forms part of the baseline. Now, another is closing lines across river mouths and bays. And the other one is archaeopelagic baseline. Okay? What are the limitations on the use of straight baseline method? What is the limitation? Okay? The baseline must not depart to any appreciable extent from the general direction of the coast. Okay? So, counting those islands, okay, let us say if the islands now are outside of that territory, let us say it's in the Pacific Ocean. If those islands discovered later on is outside of the territory that we know, that may not be counted as part of the Philippine Islands. But if it is within that territory of that 12 nautical miles, okay, that forms part of the Philippine territory. Now, so what is another limitation? The areas lying within the straight baseline must be particularly closely linked to the land formation which divide or surround them. Take note, you know, the earth is divided into crust or just like continental shelf. If that portion does not fall or is not within that shelf, let us say it's in another part of that broken shelf, that may not form part of that territory because it may not be contiguous. You understand what I'm talking? You know the earth is like an egg, right? An egg. Cracked egg. Okay? That's why every time there is an earthquake, the crack will move. So the territory must also be within that crack. Okay? It could not be that this is the Philippines here and another portion is in another crack. Okay? It should be in one shelf. What do you call that crack? Okay? Okay? Sometimes it's called the... Huh? I mean the crack, I'm referring to what they call it. Yeah, sometimes it is called the ring of fire. Okay? It moves, it shakes. Okay? It cracks moves. That's why we have earthquake. Once the crack collide to each other, sometimes it forms mountain or along the way it causes earthquake. Now, accounts should be taken of a certain economic interest peculiar to a region when their reality and importance are clearly evidenced by a long usage. Okay, another proof that it may be part of the territory is the region. Okay, economic interest as well. Now, What is archipelagic states? Archipelagic state. That is actually, it refers to Philippines. We are an archipelagic state. But what is an archipelago? Okay, means group of islands, including parts of the islands, interconnecting waters, and other natural features. What are archipelagic states? States constituted wholly by one or more archipelagos and may include other islands. What is the concept of straight archipelagic baseline? Straight archipelagic baseline. Okay? Remember this one because aside from this will come out in our test today, this is what we apply. This is the applicable baseline in the Philippines. Archipelagic states may draw straight baselines by joining the outermost points of the outermost islands and drying reefs of the archipelago. I've been explaining this. Okay, the outer islands, you connect it, that forms part of the Philippines. What does sovereignty of the archipelagic states cover? Okay, extends to the water enclosed by the archipelagic baseline, regardless of their depth or distance from the coast to the subjacent airspace over the archipelagic waters, as well as their bed and subsoil and the resources contained therein. So, outside of the 12 nautical miles, from the 12 nautical miles, above it and below it, including the subsoil that forms part of the Philippines. Okay, as you recall, what is the limit of the airspace of the 12 nautical miles? Would it include the moon, which is above the Philippines? Would that include? That will not include. The limit is the theory where an airplane that goes beyond it, it explodes. That is basically estimately 80 kilometers above. If the airplane goes beyond that, it will explode because of air pressure. It's already outer space. Okay? And what is in outer space? It's just a space. It's a vacuum. It's vacuum. So airplane will not, I think it cannot fly. Now, okay, below the 12 nautical miles, what can you find? Seabed. What is seabed? Where you can find the fish, right? Where you can find the corals. Beneath it, what do you call it? What do you call it? Beneath, below the seabed. It is called the subsoil. The subsoil forms part still of the Philippines. Is there a limit? Would it reach, let us say, the inner core of the earth? Would it be part of the Philippines? If you would dig deeper, that below the subsoil, and you reach there the mantle or the crust or the inner core, would it be still part of the Philippine territory? Not anymore. Okay. So, what is the limit? Subsoil, but what if you reach, upon digging, you reach the inner core, and then, at the back of Philippines is United States, and you reach United States, would it be part of Philippines? Well, there's no limit as long as as far as you can reach that part of the Philippines. Okay? Yeah, anything below it, okay, dig it. It's yours. It's part of the Philippines. Now, However, the regime of archipelagic sea lanes passage shall not, in other respect, affect the status of the archipelagic waters, including the sea lanes or the exercise by the archipelagic state of its sovereignty over such waters and their airspace, bed, subsoil, and the resources contained therein. Now, take note of that because Philippines has exclusive right over it. No other country can violate that right. Okay, so if an airplane passed through that airspace of 12 nautical miles above our territory, we have all the rights to stop it. If that plane is not commercial, we have the right to shut it down. If it's commercial, there must be a treaty. Because it happened, I think I mentioned in the class, that an airplane coming from Alaska going to Korea, it passed international, it traversed an international airspace, but later on, upon the voyage, it traversed Russia. Russian pilot or Air Force shot it. Okay, they are held liable by United Nations because they should make it sure that the plane is a threat to their territory. The fact that they failed to ascertain whether the plane is a fighter plane or a passenger plane, okay, they are held liable. Okay, so basic rule of engagement, you should know first whether it is a passenger plane or not. If it is not, then if you are not sure, contact because there is a communication open to them while they are in air. Okay. Now, what is archaeophylatic sea lanes passage? Archaeophylatic sea lanes passage means the exercise of, in accordance with the law of the Sea Convention, of the rights of navigation and overflight in the normal mode solely for the purpose of continuous, expeditious, and unobstructed transit between one part of the high seas or exclusive economic zone and another part of the high seas or exclusive economic zone. Okay? So, an archaeopelagic state may designate sea lanes and air routes there above suitable for continuous and expeditious passage of foreign ships and aircraft through or over the archipelagic waters and adjacent to its territorial sea. All ships and aircraft enjoy the right of archipelagic sea lanes passage in such sea lanes and air routes. What does that mean? There should be a treaty actually where an airplane can pass to the territories of another. There are territories, however, where they cannot reach their territory unless they pass by another airspace of another territory of another state. Example, if your country is bounded by several states, okay, wherever you go, it's another country. Okay, so meaning you cannot reach your country not unless you cross a territory of another, right? Okay, di pwede you go to space and then drop down immediately to your country. You pass by a territory of another state. Okay, that is what we call the sea lanes passage. If passing through your territory is the most continuous, expeditious, and unobstructed transit. Okay? Most expeditious, continuous, and unobstructed transit may be an exemption to the rule. Okay? What is the right of innocent passage? Okay? What is the right of innocent passage? An easement of innocent passage allows a foreign merchant or public vessel to pass through a maritime zone of the littoral state. Okay? And what is the limit that the passage is really innocent? Okay? Take note, it is allowed to pass through a territory of another. Okay? One is an innocent passage. And the criteria is that the passage must be really innocent. What do you mean by innocent? You do not use it to gain access or information of another state. Okay? It should be innocent. No insidious mind that may be applied. What do you mean by insidious? You are so wise, you pretend that it is an innocent passage, but in reality, you are actually gaining information about the territory of the Philippines. That is not innocent passage. And that second is there is only a passage passing through with no loading or unloading of person or goods. Okay? No loading or unloading of persons or goods. When is passage innocent? Innocent so long as it is not prejudicial to the peace, good order, security of the coastal state. Now, when is passage prejudicial to peace, good order, security of the coastal state? When is it prejudicial? Okay? When there is a threat or use of force against the sovereignty, territorial integrity, political independence. Okay? Any exercise of the weapons of any kind. What else? Collecting information, okay, of the coastal state. Fourth, act of propaganda aimed at affecting the defense of the security. Okay. Another, loading or unloading of the commodity. 6, carrying out research and survey activities. Okay. 7, launching, landing, or taking aboard of any aircraft. What else? Number 9. No. Launching, landing, taking on board of any military device. Like, what are military device now that they use in modern warfare? Drones. Okay? There's no more aircraft used, but they use drones. Okay? It lands drones. Next, what else? Any act aimed of interfering with the system of communication. Okay, they put up a means to destroy our communication. 10, act or willful serious pollution contrary to UNCLOS. Oh, they throw their garbage in the Philippines. 11, any fishing activities. How about right now? Chinese fishing vessel is now in our territory catching fish. Okay, would that violate? Would that be an innocent passage if they are in our territory? It's not. It is not. 12. Other activity not having direct bearing on passage. Okay, so what is the lesson learned here? If it is our territory, no one can use it. Okay, if it is an innocent passage, making it sure that it's really innocent. Okay, so take note of those instances when the act may be prejudicial. It appears to be innocent passage, but after all, it's not. Is there a right of innocent passage through archaeophylactic water? Okay, the answer is yes. Ships of all states enjoy the right of innocent passage through archipelagic waters. However, this right is not available inside the closing lines within the archipelagic waters which had been drawn of the delimitation of the internal waters. Okay? They may pass through maybe coastal contiguous zone or exclusive economic zone, but not in the 12 nautical miles. What do you call that water within the 12 nautical miles? Huh? Yes, the archipelagic water. Okay? Another question. Is there a right of innocent passage through internal waters? Okay? No. Okay? And what is internal water? No, the rights applies only to territorial sea and archipelagic waters. What are those internal waters? Okay? For example, waters between Lapu-Lapu and Cebu. Okay, that is internal water. Can they pass here? Can they exercise innocent passage? No. Okay? That right, the right only applies to territorial sea and archipelagic water. Not to waters within or in between islands of the Philippines. Exception, the coastal state may extend its internal waters by applying the straight baseline method in such a way as to enclose its internal water areas which are previously part of territorial sea. It also applies to straits used for internal navigation converted into internal waters by applying the straight baseline method. Thus, the right of innocent passage continues to exist in the extended internal waters. Now, what are the conditions before the state may suspend the right of innocent passage of a foreign ships in archipelagic waters? What are the conditions? 1. The suspension is made without discrimination in form or in fact among foreign ships. 2nd, suspension is only temporary. 3rd, it must specify the areas of its archipelagic waters where innocent passage shall not be allowed. 4th, such suspension is essential for the protection of its security. And 5th, such suspension shall take effect only after having been duly published. Okay, take note of that. What is the meaning of regime of islands? Under the regime of islands, an island is a natural form area of land surrounded by water, which is above water at high tide and generates maritime zones. What is an internal water? Those waters which lie landward of the baseline from which the territorial sea is measured. Okay, so take note of that definition. Water which lie landward of the baseline. Okay. So what do you mean by landward? So if this is the baseline, counting, you go east, that is going to the water. Landward going within. That is internal. The land within that left side of or going in. That is called internal waters. Okay, from which the territorial sea is measured. Okay. What is territorial sea? Territorial sea is every state shall not exceed 12 nautical miles measured from the baselines. And in the case of archipelagic state, the breadth of its territorial sea shall be measured from the archipelagic baseline. Okay? So 12 nautical miles inward, that is called the territorial sea. What is the methods of determining the territorial sea? Normal baseline method and the straight baseline method. Okay? It was discussed already. Okay? Contiguous zone, I discussed already. What is contiguous zone? Okay, so it's time to get 1/4.